Hello, this is the first of two modules in the Personal and Professional Skills class that looks at what the International Baccalaureate program considers to be its most important feature, the learner profile. The learner profile is a series of 10 traits successful people tend to have. IB believes that these traits can be organic to who you are, but that they can also be nurtured and strengthened over time. Our belief is that you should be able to look at everything you are doing in life, your classes, your extracurriculars, everything. And instead of seeing those things as isolated moments in your day, you should be able to unify the entire experience of your life underneath the umbrella of your development in the learner profile traits. This module will look at 5 of these traits. The 5 traits here are a little different from the other 5 because these first 5 aren't really academic in nature. They are qualities that make it more likely for the other 5 traits to develop. They include risk-taking, which has to do with your ability to take on new tasks you've never done before, or sharing with a group when you might otherwise stay silent, or just allowing yourself to go with the flow when you might otherwise want to know exactly what to do in order to get the grade that you're interested in. Balance, which has to do with finding that sweet spot in life where your academics, your family, your friends, your extracurriculars, and your other obligations are at peace with each other. Principled, which has to do with the integrity through which you approach your life, not cheating when you could, showing up to an event because you said you would, doing your fair share within a group project. These are all examples of how we show a principled life in high school. Open-minded, which has to do with your ability to listen to the contributions of others, to have a positive growth mindset when it comes to working on projects that are frankly vague, to say yes to an experience when your inclination might be to say no, and to check yourself beyond your initial biases to assess people's intentions through different lenses. More on that later. And finally, caring, which has to do with your ability to look out for your fellow human beings, the animals around us, and the environment from which we rely on for so very much. But it could also be about caring about what's happening in school, to get off your phone and be present to the life that's around you, instead of dismissively ignoring it. I hope as I read through those that you found yourself identifying with things that you do positively, as well as things that you might need to work on within these traits. And if you were wondering, how can I develop as a more caring person in, say, math class? I would suggest that you could lean in and focus on why you should care about the content more, or you could look around you and see where you might be able to assist others who are struggling, or you may be able to draw connections to how you can use what you're learning in math class, and instead of dismissing it, applying those concepts to making the world a better place by focusing on things you're already passionate about. This course is about personal and professional skills, and the fact that in your professional life, you will need to interact and engage with people that you don't always have an instant connection to. The term we use to describe this quality is called interpersonal communication, and we will spend some time on developing that skill in this course. To help us see the traits through this interpersonal communication lens, we will turn to the work of Daniel Hoffman, who came up with a concept called quadrants. Unlike IB, which looks at these traits as noble goals in and of themselves, which we all need to develop, Hoffman looks at your traits as both positive and negative, same trait. He believes that there is the noble trait itself, for example, caring, but then he considers the idea that sometimes a person's natural tendency to care may go too far. He calls this a pitfall of a caring person. Perhaps they might be too involved with other people's lives, or perhaps they cover and make excuses for someone else's bad behaviors because they care about them and they think, they had a bad life and somebody needs to protect them. These might be the pitfalls of someone who cares. Then, Hoffman asks you to think about the opposite of caring, but in a noble light, meaning if your tendency is to care for others, how would holding back on that trait be useful? You might say tough love falls under this category, where you are purposefully not helping in order for someone else to figure out what to do on their own. It's not that you don't care, but you are suppressing your natural tendencies to act on those caring feelings in order to get a more positive outcome. Finally, Hoffman asks you to think about the opposite of caring, but in its negative light. For instance, you might say someone who doesn't care might be dismissive to others or self-centered. Hoffman calls this your allergy, meaning you strongly connect to caring, and therefore when you look at somebody who's self-centered or dismissive to others, you might be actually repulsed by that person. This is a useful exercise because it helps us think about interpersonal relationships. If people complain about you, that might just be a pitfall to an otherwise noble quality. And it's helpful to know how to grow in that quality, even if it means pulling back, right? For instance, when I was department chair for my English team of teachers, I felt that in my role as department chair, I had to solve problems. But that bothered people who just wanted to vent frustrations. My noble quality is that I was a critical thinker. I try to solve for problems. But it also makes me annoying, to be honest, if I'm not careful about trying to just go in and solve everybody's problems. Now, it's easy for me to be indignant when somebody reacts that way and say, hey, what's your problem? I'm just trying to help. But that's not useful, is it? So now, I have to take a deep breath and I have to read the situation more when I see it. And I have to kind of figure out when somebody is venting to me. I have to assess whether or not they just want to talk or if they're seeking some kind of guidance from me. See, that's my challenge, to be a more empathetic listener. And what about my allergy? Brain dead people who complain and don't do anything about their situation. Yep, that's definitely an allergy for me. But this exercise is meant for us to check that bias, meaning, there's probably more there than just being dismissive. There's probably a noble quality underneath that we have to seek to find in order to make those connections. I want you to spend about 90 minutes on this module. There's a lovely 10-minute lecture by Daniel Hoffman himself as he talks about the depth of his quadrants. And there's also an article for you to read about the learner profile traits. For each trait, I've included a 1-minute video that's geared towards kids. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's like animated. But I find those videos very useful for getting to practical examples of a trait. For instance, if you use an iPhone app to solve your math problems, you probably aren't 100% principled. No offense. Then, for each trait, I've created a quadrant for you to fill out. Take your time with each one, maybe 10 minutes or so. Try not to rush and just think up words, but try, as I tried to model in this video, how you might actually see these traits playing out in your life. Finally, there's a whole group activity that will get to us sharing our thoughts on these first 5 learner profile traits. Thanks for listening.